Mark Levin here. After any presidential election, I take time to reevaluate my own financial investments. That's why I continue to invest in gold for help with my financial protection. When it comes to gold, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're a top gold company in America, and that's who I turn to for my own gold purchases. Call them now at 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit. And see if you qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. And tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You come to this program because you want to know principled truth. You come to this program because you know I am not influenced by any third party in what I think and what I believe. And so we're going to take a look at this so-called ceasefire deal and draw our own conclusions without all the press releases, all the patting on the back. It's not even completed as far as Israel's concerned through their process. All the misleading media and so forth and so on. I start with a few premises. I trust President Trump. That doesn't mean we'll always agree, but I trust President Trump. And when he texted me after he won the Republican primary, unsolicited by me, he said, I want you to know, Mark, quote, I will protect Israel. I trust Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who's been the greatest prime minister in the history of Israel and has done more to protect that country than one can imagine, from foreign enemies and domestic enemies and the Biden administration. They're not the only parties involved in this. I do not trust Hamas, a terrorist organization. I despise it. I do not trust Qatar, a terrorist organization dressed up as a country that has given aid and comfort, billions of dollars to Hamas, that gave safe haven to Hamas leaders, and now is one of the leading mediators in this so-called ceasefire peace deal. And what is a peace deal? What is a piece of paper to a terrorist organization? It's nothing. I do not trust Biden and Blinken under any circumstances in any deal, because they've sold out our country to the communist Chinese, they've sold out Israel to Iran, and they've created horrendous inhumanity throughout the world. And they have blood on their hands. Blood on their hands. I find it interesting that even some of my friends are saying that under this deal, hundreds of Palestinian prisoners will be released. No, 3,000 will be released, not hundreds. It's right there in print. 3,000 terrorists including convicted murderers. Would we do that? You don't know my conclusion yet. I'm taking you through the steps of my thinking. Would we release 3,000 terrorists for any reason? When we released, or should I say the Biden regime released, was it 3 Al-Qaeda terrorist leaders from Guantanamo Bay secretly without consulting Congress? Were we not furious? How about 3,000? Seems a little bit on the high side, don't you think? The hostages. They've been through holy hell. Those that have survived. And we want them out too. The IDF soldiers, almost 1,000 of them, have died. It's an enormous number for a tiny country. They have died for the purpose of defeating Hamas, for the purpose of ridding Hamas from the Gaza Strip, for the purpose of protecting Israel. From today forward, young men and women have put their lives on the line. From the streets of Israel, in every walk of life, they have died. Did they die for this? Or did they die to destroy Hamas? Serious questions, don't you think? And right out of the box, Biden talks about this sets the foundation for a Palestinian state. And I do fear that there are people whispering President Trump's ears who promote the same thing. A Palestinian state. I know their names, but I will save that for another day. But I have to believe President Trump himself knows better. He's given no indication that he does support such a thing. That is a red line. That is a red line. I've gone through this deal, which is not in writing, which is not finalized, to the extent it's available in the Jerusalem Post. So let's go through it together. According to reports, the agreement will include supervision by Qatar, a terrorist nation, and Egypt of the return of refugees from the southern Gaza Strip to the north, and simultaneously the withdrawal of the IDF from the Nazirem corridor will be completed in stages. Hamas demanded that the mediators determine the time frame in which the IDF will withdraw. Using a timetable, Joe Biden said that the foundations of the deal have been proposed as early as June 2024. So there's phases. Phase 1. The first phase of the deal will last 42 days, and implementation of the agreement will begin 2 or 3 days after its signing. When a terrorist organization signs a piece of paper, ladies and gentlemen, do they feel an obligation to comply with it? The IDF will withdraw from the Nazirem corridor in all populated areas of the enclave to about 700 meters from the border, except in 5 specified areas where will be 400 meters. The IDF will reportedly reduce its presence in the Philadelphia corridor. This is key. That's the corridor through which Hamas has been armed. And then withdraw from it completely over the course of the first 50 days. I was told that wasn't going to happen. But yet this is written here. Israel agreed to open the Rafah border crossing a week after the agreement is implemented, and the agreement will include a protocol regarding humanitarian aid during the first phase under the supervision of the mediators. Israel is expected to begin preparations to begin the movement of aid through the crossing immediately. Look at all the obligations Israel has here. Israel will open the crossing to civilians after the release of all the women, both civilians and soldiers, from Hamas's captivity. God help us on what they're going to tell us what's been done to them. All wounded and sick Palestinian civilians will be allowed to leave through Rafah crossing following its reopening to civilians. Hamas will be permitted to transfer 50 wounded operatives. I don't know what that is. Are those terrorists? To Egyptian hospitals each day. However, each operative is subject to approval by both Israel and Egypt. The crossing will remain jointly operated by Israel and Egypt. Israel will begin allowing unarmed refugees to return to the north of Gaza Strip on foot, subject to searches in the first week. Following the first week, unarmed refugees on foot will be permitted to return to the north without search via the coastal Al-Rashid Street. 2 weeks later, they'll be permitted to return via the central Salah ad-Din Road. Following the first week, refugees will be permitted to return to the north via vehicles, which will be inspected by a private company to be determined by the mediators in coordination with Israel. The fact that Qatar is a mediator makes me sick to my stomach. They funded the attack on October 7th. They're the major funding source for Hamas. And they protected the Hamas leadership in Qatar. I don't know this guy. What's his name? Whitliff? Witkoff. I'm sorry, Witkoff. I don't know this guy from a hole in the ground. He's apparently very close to President Trump. I don't like him. He's done business with Qatar. There he is, praising Qatar. You don't praise a terrorist organization that's been funding anti-Semitism in our colleges and universities. Praise them for what? Oh, they've been very good, hard at work. Even if they are, you don't praise them. You don't praise the arsonist for putting out the fire. So I don't know what the hell that's all about. But that's Witkoff. Again, I don't know him. Doesn't matter to me. The Prime Minister of Qatar confirmed that 33 hostages will be released. Wow, where's the others? The women and children first, followed by the female soldiers, then men over the age of 50 and young men who are defined as humanitarian cases. You know what that means? Yeah, we'll give you the young men for a humanitarian gesture. In exchange, Israel will release about 2,000 convicted terrorists. So why do my colleagues at Fox and elsewhere keep talking about hundreds? Thousands. 2,000 convicted terrorists, including about 250 who were sentenced to life imprisonment. In addition, Israel will release about 1,000 terrorists captured after October 7th. That's 3,000, not hundreds, 3,000 terrorists. Something we would never even consider. Just saying. Stick with me. I'll get to the end of this. 9 sick or injured hostages are to be released in exchange for the release of 110 convicted terrorists serving life sentences. They're murderers. Another article said they're actually convicted murderers. But Israel will release them in exchange for 9 sick or injured hostages. Now, in addition to those 3,000, Israel will release another 1,000 from Gaza, all of whom were arrested after October 8th, and none were directly involved on October 7th. No terrorists involved on October 7 will be released in the deal, as previously reported by the Jerusalem Post. Elderly hostages over the age of 50 are being released at a ratio of 27 life sentence prisoners and 31 other prisoners per elderly hostage. You understand? So it's one Israeli life is worth the life of 27 life sentence prisoners and 31 other prisoners. So basically, they're going to be releasing 58 prisoners in exchange for every Israeli who's released over the age of 50. The mediators promised to issue a UN Security Council resolution supporting the declaration of a ceasefire to ensure the parties comply with the agreement. Right. Israel wanted to supervise the Philadelphia corridor. That corridor is key. And Israel lost a lot of men and women fighting to get it. That's where all the arms flow through. This request was rejected. According to foreign media reports, Israel was convinced of the need to withdraw from the area. They had to be convinced, I guess, by this guy, Witkoff. The reports of a withdrawal from the Philadelphia corridor are a complete lie, however, said the Prime Minister. And it's my understanding that there will be partial Israeli forces in that corridor. And it goes on. Now you know more than anybody else on TV's reporting. The Emir of Qatar announced this so-called final hostage deal. And an influencer in Israel, Rachel Ger, she writes, if there is a clear victor of the Hamas-Israel war, it's Qatar. They nurtured Hamas, creating the horrors of October 7, and then leveraged negotiations over stolen children for political influence and financial gain. And God knows they got both out of this deal. More. Aviva Klumpus. Netanyahu's office said the prime minister will address the public after the deal is sealed and complete, quote unquote. Here's what you're not hearing. There are some technical hoops to be jumped through. The deal must pass through the security cabinet and full government cabinet. Now, their cabinet's not like ours. It's a mixture of parties. It's a coalescing of parties. And so if you have parties objecting, it could be a problem for Netanyahu. In fact, it could bring down his entire government. He's got everything on the line. The government must also allow time for opponents of the agreement to actually petition the Supreme Court. But I don't think that'll be a problem since the court's radical left. So you have this review process and possible challenges. Those aren't over, despite the misreporting of the media. Basically, what the media are reporting are their own opinions, which is constant. So where does this leave us? As patriotic Americans who support the state of Israel, where does this leave us? I'll discuss this further when we return. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It's lowered interest rates by a quarter. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you could even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. I've been watching people genuflect today, write me, call me, most trying to tell me what a fantastic deal this is. I've been watching some of my fellow conservatives and talk show hosts who don't even know what's in the deal, telling us it's a major, major victory. This really is disrespecting audiences. It's disrespecting the intelligence of the American people. It really is. And it's undermining the entire MAGA movement, because you can address this with reason, intelligence, and knowledge and not be a sycophant. A sycophant. And President Trump doesn't want that either. So I watch these guys, mostly. It's embarrassing. I'm not going to name them. I know some of them. Some of them are my buddies. It's embarrassing. My goal is to inform you. Give you my opinion, then you'll make your own decision. So here's where I come down on this thing. 3,000 released terrorists. It's pretty damn outrageous. So they better get something big in return for that. 98 hostages, they call them, including those who are dead. If they're dead, they're not hostages anymore. They're dead. Murdered. I don't know how many are alive. And we feel for the families, for God's sakes, we sure do. And we feel for the hostages that are alive and sad. Deeply saddened by those who've been murdered. I want to go through this with you and see what you think. I'll be right back. The markets are volatile. They're shooting up wildly only to drop without warning. The Fed just cut rates yet again, this time by a quarter point. Why? Because the Federal Reserve is not confident the economy is strong. In fact, last month only 12,000 jobs were created, all of them in the government. That's why I'm telling you again, diversification is crucially important. And diversification with gold is what I do. And the company I use, and I've used many, the best one is Advantage Gold. Call them now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help you diversify your investments and take advantage now. Now, gold has been helping to protect and grow wealth for people for thousands of years. And in these times, it can be more crucial than ever. When it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're one of the top gold companies in America. They're who I turn to when I purchase gold. Call them now, 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000 now for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help you with your investment portfolio, a.k.a. your bank accounts, your paycheck. And when you do, you could qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Folks, don't wait. Call them now, 800-900-8000, and tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
America's most powerful conservative voice. The Mark Levin Show. Dial in now. 877-381-3811.
3,000 terrorists released. That's a bridge that's very far. Let me put it to you that way. We would never do that. No country would do that. So they better get something big in return for that. I don't think there's any question that the Prime Minister of Israel and his government have come under enormous pressure from both the Biden regime and this guy Witkoff and perhaps others representing Donald Trump. Now, that can be good and that can be bad depending on the kind of pressure. I don't have any first-hand knowledge whatsoever. I've not been in touch with any of these people intentionally. But it's obvious that Biden wants a legacy. He's got a legacy. He's a failed, putrid old man. That's his legacy. He says this deal was 7 months old, but notice he couldn't get it across the finish line. But then I understand this isn't really the entire Biden deal, that there were changes made. Okay, great. But there's no question that President Trump wanted this done too. Or he wouldn't set his envoy over there, Witkoff. So it got done. So we look at that. We look at the fact that Hamas is claiming victory. That Biden's claiming victory. That this group CARE, a Hamas front group, a dangerous domestic organization filled with Islamists and jihadists, in my humble opinion, who celebrated October 7th. They're thrilled with this deal. They're claiming victory. What about that? But then I see, as I read what's available to us, that this is not a permanent ceasefire. This is not a peace treaty of sorts, which, of course, Hamas will violate. They'll immediately start to rearm, I'm sure. Israel is free to go back into Gaza, as well as the IDF soldiers who are already in Gaza, and take care of business. There's nothing that stops them from doing it. In fact, the Philadelphia quarter, that was essential, in which they lost a lot of soldiers to take, which is the key quarter through which weapons travel. In fact, Israel will have a presence there. This likely will help initiate an expansion of the Abraham Accords. But I think there needs to be a few other things here from my perspective. The incoming administration needs to make it abundantly clear that they will not pressure Israel for a two-state solution. That is a final solution. That is a final solution, even if it means Saudi Arabia not becoming a member of the Abraham Accords, even if it's not a formal member. Saudi Arabia needs us more than we need Saudi Arabia. And I don't care who Saudi Arabia is investing in, just like Qatar. They buy people and sell people left and right. We, the American people, are the people who matter. Under this agreement, since both presidents are taking some credit for it, we now have a responsibility, in fact, an obligation, to support Israel if Israel decides it needs to go back at a war footing with Hamas as a result of withdrawing from large swaths of Gaza. We now have an obligation. Having supported this this deal, whoever's deal it is. I think we also have an obligation, and I would urge the Republicans in Congress to do this, to find out exactly the extent of Qatar's, or Qatar as they now call it, the extent of Qatar's terrorism activities, terrorism funding, anti-Semitic support, both in our country and throughout the world. And with respect to Hamas, we need a report, we need an investigation, we need to know the extent to which Qatar has cost American lives, Israeli lives, and other lives, because it can't have it both ways, and yet it does right now. And I saw Witkoff in his comments today was praising Qatar, and I'm going, oh my God, these are the people who harbored Hamas and funded Hamas. Why are we praising Qatar? Even if you think they're helpful right now, why would you do that? Anyway, that's just me. And then I have here from just a few minutes ago, it's a public posting by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke this evening with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump and thanked him for his assistance in advancing the release of the hostages, for helping Israel bring an end to the suffering of dozens of hostages and their families. It's a lot to digest, isn't it, American? If we don't knee-jerk, we're looking at this, what do we make of all this? I make this. Hamas is still a terrorist group. And it survives, at least for now. The hostages, those who are alive, will be released, finally. As will 3,000, not hundreds, 3,000 Palestinian terrorists. Israel will have the freedom to go back into Gaza. And I see this as similar to the so-called ceasefire deal in Lebanon, where Israel has repeatedly gone back into Lebanon to kill the enemy, to blow up their supply chains, to hit Hezbollah, and to hit it hard. I see the same freedom for Israel in doing the same to Hamas. The same way Israel is going into Syria and hit Syria, and going into Yemen and hit the Houthis. This is not a peace treaty. They just call this a ceasefire, a so-called ceasefire. I think an expansion of the Abraham Accords is a good thing, as long as Saudi Arabia doesn't get its way with a two-state solution. And as I said, that is a red line for me. That's where I say that's enough. Enough is enough. The fact that Hamas and Biden and Kerr are claiming victory is annoying as hell, but it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. I think it's a close call. But then I go back to the beginning. I trust Donald Trump when he tells me in a text that he will protect Israel, because I believe it. I trust Benjamin Netanyahu, the greatest prime minister in the history of Israel, and a great war prime minister, that even regardless of all the immense pressure that's been placed on him, if he's decided to go forward with this, he's not a fool. There's a lot of bad actors in this. Some people who profit from this, some countries, but that's a nasty neighborhood, the Middle East. It certainly is. I feel very bad for the IDF families that have lost loved ones in the war in Gaza. I truly do. I think the worst part of this is the release of 3,000 terrorists. I think that is a very, very bad thing. So it's not that you're going to find me, if it matters to you at all, being a cheerleader, a pom-pommer for this deal. But you will not find me opening both barrels against it. I'm a skeptic. It's going to happen. We will watch it. We will see what takes place. But I'm also smart enough to know that there's more going on than this. Again, I haven't spoken to anybody. That Israel's primary target is Iran, that they need to take out the Iranian nuclear sites. They need that regime to be changed, to collapse. I suspect that's Netanyahu's perspective as well, and the more conservative members of his government, not all of them, but many of them, in Likud, as an example. That they need to face the fact that it's now or never to take out Iran under the Trump alliance. Perhaps that was discussed, perhaps it wasn't, I have no idea. But if Iran collapses, it's hard to see how Hamas survives, quite frankly, or Hezbollah for that matter. Unless, of course, Qatar continues to fund them, and that's why Qatar needs to be investigated by the Republicans in Congress. The associations with Qatar need to be investigated. Who in our country is benefiting from this country, Qatar? How they are sending their resources to influence our colleges and universities and to fund the Hitler Youth in the streets that we see and anti-Semitism in the United States. This has to stop. And rather than praise Qatar, for God's sakes, we need to hold Qatar to account. This insanity has to stop. Now, that said, we will see how this works out as it proceeds. No, I'm not taking a middle ground. I've given all the information I have and how I'm weighing it. Look, if I had my way, there'd be no deal. The Israelis would be free to finish the job. But there are other countries involved that aren't willing to allow that to happen. And Israel doesn't have its own massive defense industry. It just doesn't. It wishes it did, I'm sure, but it's a little country. It's trying to build up more independence in its industry, in its defense industry, and it's doing it with technology. Its advances in laser technology are second to none. They're even beyond ours. And that will be a game changer, as I've discussed here before. It's public. I'm not giving any secrets. So under these conditions, under these circumstances, we're going to have to watch and see how this plays out. I also want to salute President Donald Trump. Because President Donald Trump wants to advance the cause of liberty and humanity. He absolutely does. Not just in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia, in our own hemisphere. I know him. This is who he is. I'm sure he wanted this deal for his inauguration, but he wanted it for more than that, ladies and gentlemen. I know this from my talking with him. Not about this deal. There was no such deal when we spoke. He really does get upset watching what's going on in Ukraine, watching what's going on in the Middle East. And some of these visions stick with him, like the young lady that we all saw in the video. Looked like an IDF female soldier at the breakout of the October 7th slaughter. Who was grabbed by the back of her hair. She had blood on her pants, which means she had been raped. And they forcibly forced her into the back of the car. And he always wondered what happened to her. She was murdered. That's what happened to her. And it's bothered him. And it bothers us. He knows Hamas is monstrous. He knows Iran is monstrous. I mean, what the hell? They've been trying to assassinate him. And so we have to trust him and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu here. Like we could not trust Biden and Blinken. Absolutely not. And while this is an ugly deal, you're dealing with Hamas, so every deal is going to be ugly. Certainly not a perfect deal. In some ways, Trump inherited this from Biden. There's aspects of this I do not like. But that's just me. I'm just a talk show host. But, on the other hand, it will not be me who tries to sink it either. It'll proceed. We'll see what happens. Benjamin Netanyahu is an enormously brave man. This could destroy his government. It is he, not Biden. It is he, nobody else, who's won the war against Hamas and Hezbollah, who's all but destroyed Iran but was ready to take the extra step, and I hope Trump supports him in that regard, that's for sure, who's taken on the Houthis like nobody else. Netanyahu and the IDF deserve all the credit in the world for what's been taking place up to now. All of it. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It lowered interest rates by a quarter. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you can even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Just to repeat, it's not a peace treaty. And Mike Waltz was just on Fox with Brett Baer, and he said, we've made it very clear to the Israelis, if they need to go back in, we're with them if Hamas doesn't live up to the terms of this agreement. Hamas is not going to continue as a military entity, he said. And it's certainly not going to govern Gaza, he said. These are important points. Mike Waltz is a good guy. And he's an honest guy. Repeat, Hamas is not going to continue as a military entity, and it's certainly not going to govern Gaza. So these are all very important points that are not points that the Biden regime would ever make. So that's important to understand as well. So I've made clear my opinion, if it matters to anybody. Everybody keeps asking me, so now you know. Most people who are speaking about this now have not done the basics of informing themselves before they open their mouths. And so they're commenting on things they don't know. They're ambiguous. They're making generalities. They're saying, I'm on this team, not on that team. That doesn't get you far enough, ladies and gentlemen. This 1 hour, listening to this program, you now know more than anybody watching any news channel in America. Period. Period. We'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Governor Ron DeSantis will be on the program in about 20 minutes to discuss, among other things, his effort to support President Trump in the deportation of illegal aliens, especially starting with the criminals. His plan to do it, he's got an entire strategy laid out. Apparently he shared it with the president. I read they were golfing over the weekend. Those two like to golf. You know, I used to golf here and there and so forth, and then, of course, I did this to my leg, and before that I had a disc that blew up in my back, so I can't even swing the damn thing anymore. Man, could I hit a far ball, though? I really could. Problem was the other part of the game. I have no patience for it. These guys, they'll stay out there 6 hours, 5 hours, they golf. I can't do it. It's just me. It's not for me. Now and then, I used to play, what, twice a year? I remember when I was playing once, this is 2 decades back, we had a neighbor named Mark Rippon. You might remember him. A tremendous guy, former quarterback for what we then called the Redskins, and most people still call the Redskins. And he and the kids and all lived, I think, 4 or 5 houses down. That was it. He goes, "Hey, Mark." "Yes, sir." "Let's go play golf. This guy can play golf." And I did the best round of golf in my life, Mr. Producer. I hit in the mid-80s, I think. Now, I'm hitting like 100, 110, 112. I mean, I'm playing twice a year. That's it. But I hit a good drive. I can putt, but it's everything in between that's kind of messy. And my view of that was just try and stay on the damn course. And I will also tell you, I've seen Donald Trump hit a drive, and man, he hits it straight as an arrow and very, very far. You know, you hear these stories, well, he gets to the... No. I saw it. He can hit a golf... he can really hit a golf ball. The guy's 78 years old. He hits it far, he hits it straight. He's very, very good at it. And DeSantis apparently is a great athlete, too. You know, he could have gone into professional baseball at some point if he wanted to, so they're playing golf. I'm going to ask him about that. But anyway, he wants to get ahead of the ball. Florida's a big state. He wants to deal with illegal immigration. He wants his legislature to come along. He's got 2 egomaniacs. One runs the House, one runs the state Senate. My words, not his. My words, not his. And he's got a whole plan in place, and so he's going to discuss it with us to some extent on the program in about 15 minutes now. Pam Bondi, my wife Julie and I are very fond of Pam Bondi. She's going to make an outstanding attorney general, and just like Pete Hegseth, she went toe-to-toe with Adam Schiff and these other reprobates on that committee. She was absolutely outstanding. She goes up against this Sheldon Whitehouse, who's a complete putz. Blumenthal. He was on the other committee last night, and there he is again today. He was really exceptional. She was, I should say. Let's take a little listen here with Adam Schiff. Let's see, Mr. Producer. Let me find it here. I just saw the cut. What was it? Let's start at the beginning. Cut 9. Go.
Let me ask you a different, simple question. The president also wants to jail Liz Cheney. Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual basis to investigate Liz Cheney? Yes or no?
Senator, that's a hypothetical, and I'm not going to answer that question. No,
it's not hypothetical. I'm asking you, sitting here today, whether you are aware of a factual predicate to investigate Liz Cheney.
Senator, no one has asked me to investigate Liz Cheney. That is a hypothetical.
The president has called for it publicly. You are aware of that, aren't you?
No one has asked me to investigate.
But the president has
We're
called,
also worried about Liz Cheney,
the
Senator.
President has
you know
called
what we
for
should
this,
be worried about?
Ms. Bondi, please answer my questions.
California right now
you are
is
aware,
through the roof.
Ms. Bondi,
Your robberies are 87% higher than the national average.
My question is this.
That's what I want to be focused on, Senator.
Do you have the power to say no to the president?
General.
And what you're suggesting today by your non-answer is you don't.
Shut up, you weasel. You quizzling little puke. She was great, wasn't she? Cut 10, go.
The president has said Jack Smith should go to jail. Will you investigate Jack Smith?
Senator, I haven't
First
seen
of all, she's not going to say who she's investigating and not investigating. That's unethical under every state rules of professional conduct. He knows it, but he's unethical. Which is why the House of Representatives, remember? They sanctioned him. Go ahead.
In the investigation, I haven't looked at anything. It would be irresponsible of me to make a commitment regarding anything without, you're a long practicing attorney, without looking at a file.
He's a slip and fall moron. Go ahead.
You would need a factual predicate to open an investigation of Jack Smith, is that right?
Not a summary by you sitting here. Yes, sir.
And not a summary by the president either, right?
Absolutely.
So a summary by the president or his desire to investigate Jack Smith would not be enough for you to open an investigation of Jack Smith. Is that right?
I will look at the facts and evidence in any case. And sitting here today, Senator, 72% of Americans
I only have
have
7
lost
minutes.
faith in the Department of Justice.
Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual predicate to investigate Jack Smith? Sitting here today, yes or no?
Senator, I will look at the facts and the circumstances.
You can't answer that question. You're not a part of the department yet. There's no worry about divulging law enforcement sensitive information. So just tell us, are you aware of a factual predicate to investigate Jack Smith? Yes or no?
Senator, what I'm hearing on the news is horrible. Do I know if he committed a crime? I have not looked.
You seem reluctant to answer a simple question.
She answered it, P-Brain. You just don't like it. Cut 11, go.
Will it be your advice to the president? No, Mr. President, I need to go over them on a case-by-case basis. Do not issue blanket pardons. Will that be your advice to the president?
Senator, I have not looked at any of those files. If confirmed, I will look at the files
and will you be able to review hundreds of cases on day one?
I will look at every file I am asked to look at.
Of course you won't. So will you advise the president?
Can I answer the question?
Well, my question
I would have plenty of staff. You said, of course you want.
You'll be able to review hundreds of cases on the first day?
I'm not going to mislead this body, nor you.
All right, let me ask another question. You don't want to answer that. Let me ask another question.
You were censured by Congress, Senator, for comments just like this that are so reckless.
Oh, baby. Oh, baby. I like the way they push back. That's why they don't want these people. I'm telling you. Don't you have a smile on your face listening to Pam Bondi right there? I do. Don't you, Mr. Producer? Hey, there's more. Cut 12. Go.
Will you now retract your previous
By the way, this is Alex Padilla, who nobody's heard of except people in California. He's a senator. Will you now retract your previous statements? Go ahead.
Will you now retract your previous statements that Trump won Pennsylvania in the 2020 election? Yes or no?
Oh,
By the way, he did win Pennsylvania. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania handed Biden the victory. They changed the rules in Pennsylvania for certain counties. Anyway, I don't need to relitigate that. Go ahead.
To Pennsylvania, and let me tell you what I saw firsthand.
Yes or no?
I didn't talk about California because I was not in California. I talked about
yes or no.
I talked about Pennsylvania because I was there.
I'm going to move on because you're clearly not answering my questions. And I want to know, colleagues, for everybody, members of the committee and everybody watching, that the attorney who stood beside Mr. Giuliani was making very similar statements. And he has since been disbarred from multiple jurisdictions for making these false claims about the 2020 election in court. And like Mr. Giuliani, as you've noted today, you've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution just as an attorney. And now
it's funny listening to these people who hate the Constitution, constantly referencing the Constitution. Go ahead.
Asking us to consider you to serve as the chief law enforcement officer in our country. So it's imperative, Ms. Bondi, that you subscribe to facts and evidence and not politically convenient conspiracy theories. Your job will be, to protect voters and election workers, not to undermine and dox them. Now, I know that earlier you agreed that Joe Biden is in fact president, but many of the president-elect's inner circle continue to spread the big lie about the 2020 election. Let me move on to a different topic.
Senator, you were speaking. May I speak? You cut me off when I was speaking.
When I ask you the next question, you can speak, and I hope you answer, Ms. Bondi.
Well, I'd like to answer the previous one, Senator.
When we met yesterday,
you pointed your finger at me and said
you were speaking.
You did not seem
to be familiar
let me answer my question. I'm not going to be bullied by you, Senator
the 14th Amendment of the United States of America, which was deeply...
What a hearing, huh, ladies and gentlemen? One Democrat blowhard after another. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You voted big government out and efficient government in. Well, now it's time to trim the fat from big wireless. If you're still on the other big name providers, I have one question. Why? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, gives you the exact same service on the exact same towers with better customer service because they're based right here in the United States, all for half the cost. That's right. There's simply no need to spend $85 or $100 per person on your wireless bill. Not when you can get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspot. Just $35 a month. My friends, the average family of four could save about $1,000 a year with Pure Talk while enjoying one of America's most dependable 5G networks. So cut the fat out of your wireless bill. Switch to Pure Talk by going to puretalk.com/Levin. Again, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk, America's wireless company. Well, it's always a pleasure to have America's governor with us, Ron DeSantis. Governor, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Now, you're playing golf with Donald Trump. Are you a good golf player? I'm just curious. You're a good athlete. I mean, you've been a good athlete most of your life, right? I can hit the ball far. I can make some putts. But I would say it's still a work in progress. I still have a little bit of the baseball swing in me for playing baseball from the time I was 3 until I was done a senior in college. It's a little bit different swing, but we're down in Florida, and it's kind of like if you live in Colorado and you don't know how to ski, well, in Florida, if you're down here and you don't golf, you're a little bit of a fish out of water. It's a big sport for us down here. But the president is a very good player, definitely the best president golfer we've ever had, and he's got great golf courses all around the world, and his one in Palm Beach County is really, really good. So it's you get your money's worth there because it's well conditioned. But man, these holes they're big time holes. They're tough, yeah. All right, you want to have a special session of the Florida legislature. You have a little bit of pushback for some really strange reason. You've got a well thought out set of proposals that you want to bring forward, so that Florida is right there at the point of the spear when President Trump says, okay, we have to start deporting these illegal aliens, especially these criminals, and you want to say, we are set, we have everything in place. Tell us about that.
So Donald Trump won in major part, because of the border and immigration. The last 4 years have been a total disaster. Republicans across the country, all the people in the Florida legislature, have complained about Biden's border policies. President Trump's victory is a mandate to reverse those policies, reestablish our sovereignty, and remove the people, particularly the people that Biden let in, and we don't even know who these people are. This is millions and millions of people. And so the states, like California, they're going to try to frustrate President Trump. Some states will just be indifferent to it, but then other states like Florida, we need to be facilitating this mission. And the federal government cannot commandeer local police departments and tell them to do this. It's a basic aspect of the structure of our Constitution. But the state, we can pass legislation imposing duties on all of our local jurisdictions, as well as the state, to assist federal immigration authorities in removing illegal aliens and in enforcing immigration laws writ large. So I set out a set of proposals. We set a special election, which I'm empowered to do, January 27th, which is a week after President Trump takes office. Now, I've spoken with him. We've spoken to some of his staff, and he's got people like Stephen Miller who are really good on these issues. They have executive orders ready to go. So you're going to see that on January 20th, major changes. And as part of those executive orders, they want to beef up something called 287G program, which allows local jurisdictions to opt into a federal program to help with immigration enforcement. They're not required to do it. We are going to require them in the state of Florida to do it. And we have a whole host of other proposals that will help in this very, very critical mission. Now, I made the call on Monday morning that we needed to do this. The two leaders in the legislature put out a letter saying that it was premature to talk about any immigration legislation. And I'm just thinking to myself, premature? We've dealt with Biden for 4 years. It's about damn time we do some illegal immigration legislation. But here's the thing. Their view is, well, it can wait till May at the end of our legislative session, and anything past then wouldn't even take effect till July 1st. Why would we waste 6 months when we can act now? Secondly, President Trump's going to need the states right off the bat more at any time in his presidency. He doesn't have all the resources. He's going to have to go to Congress and ask for wall funding. He's going to have to get funding to beef up some of the ICE and some of the other things that they're doing. They're going to need more detention space. So if the states can step up now and assist, we'll be force multipliers and we'll help process the mission, especially until he can get more funding. So, and the president agrees. He urged other governors to follow suit. We have an important role to play. You know, Mark, it's interesting, and you watch this for years. We'll do things in Florida like we criminalize smuggling people into Florida from across the border, and federal judges will say that's unconstitutional. The federal government has sole province in enforcing immigration laws. And so they basically said Biden had the right not to enforce immigration laws, and if all we wanted to do is enforce what was on the law, somehow that was a problem. Well, now you can't have it both ways. If that's the case, if the federal government is enforcing immigration laws, we're clearly supplementing them. We're not conflicting with what they're doing. So this should be a no-brainer. And I can tell you the people around the state of Florida, they're like, finally, because we've led on this issue. You know, we've done, no IDs for illegals, E-Verify. We've done all these things. And it's had an impact. We've saved a lot of tax dollars. Illegals have left the state. But you can't solve this problem without the federal government leading the way. Donald Trump is going to lead, and we're going to be there to follow. So we need to get this done. I know Tennessee's looking at a similar session, and I think you're going to see other Republican states do it, and that will really, really make a difference in whether or not the president can succeed or not.
So the president wants it. You want it. His staff thinks it's important. And you have these authorities as the governor. Are these two Republicans, these so-called leaders, still trying to prevent you from having a special session?
Well, it's interesting. I haven't really heard much since they put out the letter, but I think the response that Republicans had to that letter, when they said it was premature and it was not something that was urgent and it could wait months, that did not go over well with Republican voters. And I think if you ask them, do you want the legislature coming in, working with the governor to help support Trump's immigration policies now, or can it wait 3 or 4 months? I think it's like 80 out of 80% say do it now. They want to see action. This is a once-in-a-decade opportunity, maybe a once-in-a-generation opportunity to finally end the illegal immigration crisis in this country. And we've been talking about it for decades. We obviously have to do stuff on the border, and President Trump wants to do that. But if you don't have interior enforcement, none of this stuff is going to ultimately work. So now is the time to step up. Now is the time to lead. Florida's doing that. I wish that I had universal agreement with legislative leaders on it, but we got to put it front and center. And if they want to go into there and they don't want to act on it, then their constituents will obviously take notice of it. But I think it's untenable that you would go in there and reject equipping Florida to be able to help with this very, very important mission.
I honestly don't understand what the arguments are. What I read in their letter was so ridiculous. We can do it later. Trump's not ready. Well, Trump is ready. Well, the governor's not ready. Well, the governor is ready. He has a plan. And so we can do it in May. You don't wait. It's the first 100 days. They're critical. If you can hold on, Governor, some more questions for you. We'll be right back with America's governor, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, my state. I'll be right back. You voted big government out and efficient government in. Well, now it's time to trim the fat from big wireless. If you're still on the other big name providers, I have one question. Why? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, gives you the exact same service on the exact same towers with better customer service because they're based right here in the United States, all for half the cost. That's right. There's simply no need to spend $85 or $100 per person on your wireless bill, not when you can get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspot, just $35 a month. My friends, the average family of four could save about $1,000 a year with Pure Talk while enjoying one of America's most dependable 5G networks. So cut the fat out of your wireless bill. Switch to Pure Talk by going to puretalk.com/Levin. Again, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk, America's wireless company.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
We're here with America's governor, Governor Ron DeSantis. Let me ask you this question, Governor. If you were me, you're sitting behind this microphone, and you're told Joe Biden's going to give his 1200th farewell address, and it's live at 8, would you take it, or would you pass on it? What would you do?
Well, if you want your audience to decline, Mark, then you should take it. But I don't think you want that. I think they'd much rather listen to you, in the words of wisdom. So, I mean, here's the thing. Like, you and I are political. We're conservatives. We're on the right. Make no apologies about that. So, obviously, we're not going to like anyone that's kind of on the left. But there are people on the left that may like a liberal president. But just objectively speaking, Biden has been the worst president of my lifetime, and I was born during Jimmy Carter's presidency, and I don't even think it's close. And now he's intent on leaving this wave of destruction in his wake. He's commuting the sentence of these terrible people on death row. He's removing Cuba from the state sponsor of terrorist list. I mean, you name it. It's just unbelievable. And so he is ending one of the worst presidencies in American history. And I think that the ratings will likely be very low, and I think that's because the American people just want to move on from Joe Biden.
And what do you make of him taking credit for this ceasefire? I'm of two minds on this ceasefire. I don't like a lot of it, like 3,000 terrorists being released. But on the other hand, Netanyahu knows what he's doing, Trump knows what he's doing, and they still have the power to go back into Gaza and take care of business. And this time, by the way, they'd be able to do it without any hostages there. But, I'm not going to oppose it, but I'm not a cheerleader for it, quite frankly. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think I've heard mixed things in terms of the news reports I've read. I think at the end of the day, we know this. January 20th, we are going to have a much stronger relationship with Israel than we've had over the last 4 years. I cannot imagine that Donald Trump, with all that he's done to support Israel, is going to accept anything less than a Gaza Strip that has no more Hamas. Hamas cannot continue to be a terrorist force that is threatening the state of Israel. October 7th taught us that. At the end of the day, these people want to eliminate the Jewish state entirely. I think the president and his team understand that. And so I think you're likely to see more shoes to drop. I mean, Donald Trump said all the hostages needed to be returned, and I think he means all of them. So whatever Biden has done with getting some back, I don't think that's the end of the story. I think Donald Trump's going to see it through. So I definitely mixed reviews on what I've seen so far, but I think we should wait till Donald Trump gets in because I think he's going to end up getting this right.
I think that's a good point. Also, Iran is really the big actor there, and it looks like Netanyahu and Israel really do want to take out that nuclear site. And I think if you take out, or sites, and if you take out those sites, I think that government falls and the people there who don't want that government are liberated. Maybe they're playing the bigger game. Maybe that's the focus. What do you think of that?
There's no question that when President Trump gets in, if Israel were to take action in that way, he would not immediately go and undercut him like Biden would. And I think Bibi understands that. And you look at this, Iran has been weakened dramatically since October 7th. I mean, think about it, Mark. You have Biden and his administration doing all they can to prop up Iran. But Israel, with their determination fighting not only Hamas, but Hezbollah, they have done remarkable work in weakening these really key arteries of Iranian terror. So Iran is as weak as it's been militarily in a long time. I think it's going to get a lot weaker economically because I think Trump's going to drop the hammer on them economically. I think he's going to bankrupt them like he did in his first term. So now is the time to end the threat. So if Israel wants to take that action, I think you're going to see the Trump administration support. I don't think Donald Trump's going to go into Iran or do anything, but if Bibi has the ability to take out those sites once and for all, I think he'll have a supporter in President Trump.
Yeah, and they did try to assassinate him, so there is that personal element too, probably. Communist China. I don't know, I've got you, so I feel like moving around the world here. Communist China, the gravest threat we have, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. If you think about the Cold War, that was a titanic struggle between the Soviets and the United States, and it was an ideological clash. But economically, the Soviet Union was a fraction of the United States. And what's happened with China, largely because I think some misguided policies from the West that's really empowered them, is their economy has grown to the point where, you know, they will be a peer competitor with ours, both militarily and economically on the current course. Now, Donald Trump recognized this when he ran for president the first time. The people that he's surrounding himself with on national security, I mean, Congressman Waltz is from Florida. He understands the China threat. Marco Rubio understands the China threat. So you're going to see policies that are going to be more tailored to deterring Chinese expansion in the Indo-Pacific. And I think they'll be successful. Donald Trump will also do things to unwind some of the unfair trade practices that China has engaged in for many, many decades. I think that will have the impact of weakening them economically. So I think there's a pathway to where we successfully check China, deter them from invading Taiwan, and prevent them from being the dominant power in the Indo-Pacific. That would not have happened if Biden had gotten reelected or Harris had gotten elected, but I do think that's going to happen under a second Trump administration.
Let me ask you this, and I've been wondering about this. You know, I use you and your state as an example of what a governor does and what a state does to prepare for these emergencies. You know, nature is pretty brutal. It's not just about polar bears, it's about death. And you understand you're going to get hurricanes every year. You don't know how many, you don't know how bad. You've got to prepare in 1,000 different ways. You look at California, you know they're going to have wildfires out there. They create the conditions for it. You know, nature does what nature does. You can't really control nature, but you can try and ameliorate the things that occur from nature. I mean, they have water shortages, electricity shortages, brownouts, blackouts, and now they have this with the fire hydrants on. I mean, we can go into all these details, but the fact of the matter is it's not a very well-run state under Newsom, is it? You debated the man. I mean, rather than him calling you out and you debating him and defeating him, you crushed him. These are the kinds of things that a governor who wants to be governor and wants to govern should be focused on, no?
No question. I mean, when you're as a chief executive, there's going to be things you got to deal with in the legislative process. You want to sign bills, you veto things that are bad. You do all that, and day to day, you know, the legislative stuff is important. But really, you make your money in these crisis situations, and for us, it's usually the hurricanes. Although we had a big condominium tower collapse in 2021 in Surfside, Florida, which was very traumatic. We have had wildfires in Florida, and we do prescribed burns, so we take steps to be able to do it. But preparation is key, and I look back at what happened in L.A. L.A. warned that this was something. The National Weather Service put out a warning saying, hey, in the next 5 days, there could be some serious risk of fires. And what did the mayor of L.A. do? Did she make preparations? No, she flew to Ghana or somewhere when this was something that was on the radar. It'd be akin to me seeing a storm in the Gulf of Mexico that may be coming to Florida 6 days out and deciding to what? Go to France or something and leave the area? That's the time you got to be there, and you got to be offering support. And some of it is you actually have to be meeting with people. You got to be working the phones. You got to be doing all that, issuing the orders. But part of it is you just got to be out there informing the public about what's going on, the preparations that are going to be made. And when people see that, when they see that you have a command of the situation, it lowers the anxiety level. People are able to make good decisions about what they need to do to protect themselves and their family. And I think, obviously, the state of California, even before Newsom, they've had horrible policies with respect to forest management and some of these other things that make these fires worse than they otherwise would be. But, man, you're the mayor of L.A., a massive city, and this is a dire threat to your city, and you know 5 days out that this could happen, and you leave.
Crazy.
I think that's the most asinine thing I've ever seen. And as liberal as L.A. is, and this is a very left-wing mayor, California has these recalls. I bet you they try to recall her over that, and you know what? It would be justified to recall her over that.
And what do you think about Newsom? You know he still wants to be president of the United States. You think this has been at least for the rest of the country, but I would hope California too, it's really, I think, a nail in the coffin, although guys like him, they seem to have 9 lives.
Well, I think it's a nail. I think he's probably had a nail in the coffin in a general election for quite some time now. I think when we debated him, people saw a contrast and they basically saw that it's a failed state. But in the Democrat primary, I mean, I think the Democratic Party, the whole thing is failing upwards. What, are you saying that Harris did anything to earn the nomination? What did Biden do in 2020? I mean, like, this party is just massively adrift. And so, yes, it should mean that you wouldn't have that, but I'm not convinced in a Democratic primary that would necessarily matter. And so what he does is, he goes as far left as you can, which that's where their party base is. I mean, their party base, if you run for the Democratic nomination and you're asked how many genders there are, and you say 2, then you lose the primary. That's where these people are right now.
Quick question. Are you going to get your special session or not, do you think?
Well, I have the authority to call it, so there will be a special session. We now have rolled out the immigration. We have some other stuff we're going to roll out because it's not just on immigration. So there'll be policy and bills ready to go. We're obviously happy to work with, the file. I think the rank and file members of the legislature, by and large, want to do this because they know our voters are demanding it. For whatever reason, the chamber leaders said that it's premature and they want to wait several months. But Mark, you know me. I mean, when there's a job to do, we get it done. We can't just sit around and twiddle our thumbs. And what are we going to do? We're going to let massive numbers of illegal aliens run around for another 4 or 5 months? Of course not. We have a responsibility to fulfill the mandate that Donald Trump earned in November.
There you go, America's governor, and you know why. Ron DeSantis. Governor, thank you. Best to your family. God bless you, sir.
All right, God bless.
Take care. He's something else, isn't he, Mr. Producer? He really is terrific. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You voted big government out and efficient government in. Well, now it's time to trim the fat from big wireless. If you're still on the other big name providers, I have one question. Why? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, gives you the exact same service on the exact same towers with better customer service because they're based right here in the United States, all for half the cost. That's right. There's simply no need to spend $85 or $100 per person on your wireless bill, not when you could get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspot, just $35 a month. My friends, the average family of 4 could save about $1,000 a year with Pure Talk while enjoying one of America's most dependable 5G networks. So cut the fat out of your wireless bill. Switch to Pure Talk by going to puretalk.com/Levin. Again, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk, America's wireless company. Marco Rubio at his Senate confirmation hearing today about Hamas. Cut 20, go.
The real open question for the Palestinians is who will govern? Who will govern in Gaza in the short term and who will ultimately govern? Will it be the Palestinian Authority or some other entity? Because it has to be someone. That was the initial goal for Gaza when the Israelis withdrew from there. And they turned it over. And they turned it over with greenhouses and they turned it over with all kinds of economic development. Hamas won an election. They took over. And they destroyed the place and built tunnels for terrorists to operate from. So the key is not simply governance, it's who will govern. You can't turn it over to people who seek your destruction. And so I do think this is a very complex issue, and I think that's understating it. We all recognize it. But I also believe that we should not underestimate the potential opportunities that now exist. And it'll take some time to fully understand what those are, that perhaps open the door to things that were not open in the future. But from the Israeli perspective, which I fully understand, it begins with their existence. Because you cannot coexist with armed elements at your border who seek your destruction and evisceration as a state. You just can't. No nation on it. We wouldn't tolerate it, and they can't either. And it begins with having that level of security. And if they do, then I think there are opportunities that come about as a result of it. Those opportunities historically have not existed in recent times. Perhaps we're living in an era where that will be.
All right, very good. So I want to hear an affirmative, definitive statement in opposition to a so-called two-state solution. It's that simple. There's some of these billionaires and millionaires who make a ton of money with these Arab states. These Arab states are demanding that the Palestinians get their own state. Of course, they don't want to carve it out of Jordan, which is where the Palestinians, so-called, the Arabs, are originally from. Certainly Saudi Arabia wants nothing to do with it, even though they're a pretend monarchy. They were created out of whole cloth, and I could go on and on and on. The little country of Israel, why does Israel have to give up its biblical, indigenous homeland, Judea and Samaria? It doesn't. It must never, under any circumstances. For, among other reasons, the reason Rubio says. So why don't they, and they must, definitively state, we will never support such a thing? Time will tell. Time will tell. Okay, I've made an executive decision. Because you're a great audience, we will start out with Joe Biden. I will see the extent to which I choose to mock him. And then we will leave Joe Biden. Because we don't want to be humiliated by just listening to this guy go on about how fantastic he is, all of his fantastic accomplishments, and on and on and on. He's a loser. He's a disaster. By the way, Sean Duffy had hearings today for Transportation Department. Honestly, I forgot all about it. I don't think he's going to have any problem. Ratcliffe had hearings today for the CIA post. There were a lot of hearings today. I don't know. What's going on with Kristi Noem and the FBI? They're having a problem, not with her, but a problem, so they had to put off her hearing? What the hell is that all about? No, we can't have Kash Patel. Who says? Adam Schiff. I think Adam Schiff is nervous, and he should be. Pam Bondi, there's other great sound bites with her, but you can go on the internet and deal with that. She was just absolutely fantastic today, and she would not be, hoodwinked into saying things that you're not supposed to say as Attorney General of the United States or as a lawyer. And did a fantastic job, and Rubio's going to have clear sailing. Rubio's very smooth. Sometimes he'll finish a statement, and I'll wonder, okay, where are we? What's his position?
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
All right, America, let's jump into the gene pool, which is not particularly fulsome with Joe Biden. Here we go.
I'm speaking to you tonight from the Oval Office. Before I begin, let me speak to important news from earlier today. After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, by my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team and will be largely implemented by the incoming administration. That's why I told my team to keep the incoming administration fully informed, because that's how it should be, working together as Americans. This will be my final address to you from the American people from the Oval Office, from this desk as president. And I've been thinking a lot about who we are and maybe more importantly, who we should be. Long ago,
I'm sick and tired of these guys, who we should be. Mind his own damn business, take care of his own pathetic family. Go ahead.
He was joined by steel workers, stonemasons, engineers. They built not just a single structure, but a beacon of freedom. The very idea of America was so big, we felt the entire world.
He inherited a vibrant economy, inherited secure borders, a strong military, and he gutted all of them.
Like the very idea of America, it was built not by one person, but by many people, from every background and from around the world. Like America, the Statue of Liberty is not standing still. Her foot literally steps forward atop a broken chain.
All right, I've had enough. Honest to God, obviously he didn't write it. Most of them don't, but I just can't take a history lesson from him. I'm not trying to be rude. Yeah, I am kind of. I just can't take the guy. Now I want to read you something from the New York Post. Joe Biden admits Nancy Pelosi pushing Joe out of re-election bid was disappointing. You know, when he opens his speech taking credit for what's going on in the Middle East, it's so pathetic. His conduct in the Middle East was utterly hideous, funding the enemy, funding terrorists, undermining Netanyahu, trying to remove him from office. I mean, come on. Outgoing First Lady Jill Biden has admitted it was disappointing that Representative Nancy Pelosi was the one whose decisive intervention pushed President Biden out of the 2024 campaign. We were friends for 50 years, Jill, 73, told the Washington Post in an interview published Wednesday that was billed as her final sit-down while in the White House. It was disappointing. The Bidens have largely bitten their tongues when discussing the internal revolt following the president's disastrous showing in his one debate against Republican Donald Trump on June 27. I don't know why it's that debate that sort of crystallizes the moment of Biden's obvious dementia. I mean, we've been talking about it for years. While Joe Biden, 82, had initially insisted that he would carry on in the race, pressure from top Democrats, led by Pelosi, the former House Speaker, forced him to announce his withdrawal on July 21. Quote, let's just say I was disappointed with how it unfolded, the First Lady reiterated to the Washington Post. I don't know. I learned a lot about human nature. I think that's all I'm going to say. In other words, she hates Pelosi. At the time, the Post reported Pelosi had played the bad cop to Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer's good cop in convincing the president to bow out. Other outlets reported that Pelosi threatened to release internal polling showing that Biden had no choice. That Biden had no chance against Trump if the president insisted on carrying on. Pelosi then endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris. Oh, she's a winner, this Pelosi. Rather than advocating for an open primary, only to later blame Biden for not exiting the race quicker. So Pelosi is a destructive force, and she keeps making excuses for her stupid decisions. She said if the president had gotten out sooner, there may have been other candidates in the race, she told the New York Times in an interview published November 8th. Yeah, but she was the one that not only helped push Biden out, but helped coronate Kamala Harris. And then she, well, if we had more time, well. Weeks earlier, Pelosi had actually defended her actions in an interview with The Guardian, saying she thought Biden was one of the great consequential presidents of our country. Now, he's the Great Wrecking Ball. He'll be known as the Great Wrecking Ball. The Bidens and Pelosi are not believed to have made up since the drama. Last week, Biden claimed in an interview with USA Today that he could have won re-election over Trump if he'd not quit the campaign. This is how he deludes himself. This is how he gets through life. It's a fantasy, man. He said it's presumptuous to say that, but I think yes. While Joe Biden was spotted enjoying a friendly chat with Trump when both attended the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris last month. When asked about her husband's legacy, Jill said, I hope that they remember Joe as a strong, empathetic president with integrity and character. No, we remember him as a nasty old man. Insane lunatic. I mean, character really is everything, isn't it? She says, yes, and your husband had none of it. May I say, and I shall, and I did. You know what's interesting about this Biden speech? Most of the country doesn't care. This is like his fifth speech, but nobody cares. They don't want to hear it. And I have the volume off, and there he is pointing at us. You see that, Mr. Producer? There he's pointing at us. Yeah. Man takes responsibility for nothing. He harms so many people. He commutes the sentences of murders. I mean, a lot of these hostages died because of the manner in which he and the State Department conducted itself. Every time Israel was taking a hard stance in order to get the hostages out, they undermined Israel, which emboldened Hamas. And he's always taking credit for everybody else's work. Netanyahu deserves all the credit, 100%, for what's taken place with Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, all of them, especially Iran. Netanyahu does. Even though they hate his guts here, he did it. Right, Thomas Friedman? Thomas Friedman, a barely literate moron at the New York Slimes. I think he's had 17 Pulitzer Prizes. That shows you how valuable a Pulitzer Prize is. They used to be, but not really anymore. All right, let's tap back into old Joe. Let's see where he is right now. Go ahead.
More people have health care than ever before. And overseas, we've strengthened NATO.
Okay, well, more people have herpes than ever before. So, what are we to make of this, Mr. Producer?
Competition with China. And so much more. I'm so proud of how much we've accomplished together for the American people. And I wish the incoming administration success. Because I want
you tried
America
to put your opponent
succeed.
in prison. You piece of... Go ahead.
That's why I've held my duty to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition of power.
Yeah, but Trump says you're sabotaging them, which is exactly what you do. You're burning down everything humanly possible. You're putting obstacles into place. You're putting all these landmines in the federal bureaucracy, but he's trying to do it as peacefully as possible.
Go ahead. Things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few.
He's worried about the concentration of power, Mr. Concentration of Power. Seriously?
If they're abusing power,
the guy who was giving away our money, student loans, the guy who violated Supreme Court orders. He's worried about concentration of power. Go ahead.
That literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America, and we've seen it before. More than a century ago, but the American people stood up to the robber barons back then.
Oh, the robber barons, I see. The robber barons.
They didn't punish the wealthy. Just made the wealthy play by the rules everybody else had to. Workers want rights to earn their fair share. You know, they were dealt into the deal, and it helped put us on a path to building the largest middle class, the most prosperous century any nation in the world has ever seen. And we've got to do that again.
Yeah.
The last 4 years, that is exactly what we've done.
No, you haven't.
People should be able
See,
to make
that's enough. We'll be right back. I can't listen to this. Go ahead.
Mark Levin.
You know, this issue of TikTok, if it's not in American hands, it's got to go. It is a major communist spy operation. It's also influencing our youth. And I understand the importance in the last election and so forth and so on, but it either has to disgorge itself of the ownership of the communist Chinese because it's ubiquitous in our homes and our kids' minds and so forth, or it's got to go. A free nation can tolerate this forever. And so that's my view. It's very simple. It's the communist Chinese. They don't get to do what they're doing. They don't get to do what they're doing. Here's a study. Nearly 400 million Christians have been persecuted globally. Islamism and communism are the main drivers. Got that, folks? Islamism and communism, the fusion that I always talk about. By the way, Biden's done, thank God. It's 8:20. It's past his bedtime, so they'll have to, get him some cocoa, maybe a few cookies, put on his Depends, and send him to bed. But this is very important. The Christian aid organization Open Doors published its annual World Watch list, ranking the most dangerous places in the world to practice the Christian faith. I think they found it was San Francisco. But on the other hand, on Wednesday, which found that 380 million Christians around the world face severe persecution. Christian persecution, which Open Doors defines as any hostile action toward a person or community motivated by their identification with the person of Jesus Christ, is particularly prevalent in countries with widespread Islamist terrorism or run by communist regimes. Of the top 10 countries on the World Watch list, Islamic radicalism is the driver of persecution in 8 of them. The other 2, North Korea and Eritrea, are under the yoke of communist regimes. The 380, how many of you have heard this story today? Probably none. The 380 million Christians facing persecution, in many cases including deadly attacks, 310 million of them are in the top 10 nations on the list. Half of these countries are in Africa, 3 are in the Middle East, Afghanistan is in South Asia, North Korea is an outlier in the Far East region. The number of Christians facing violence, displacement, arrest, sexual violence, or other persecution around the world has already steadily increased throughout the 2020s. So who's being persecuted? The Jews and the Christians. By whom? The communists and the Islamists. North Korea has been the most dangerous country in the world to practice Christianity in the Open Doors list 23 times since the organization began publishing its annual study in 1991. If your Christian faith is discovered in North Korea, you'll either be immediately executed or deported to a horrendous labor camp that few survive. The Kim regime relies on tightly controlling people's behavior and beliefs. In early 2024, they announced stricter regulations against outside influences. It's been reported that about 30 teenagers were executed just for watching a South Korea drama last year. Think about this. Despite this, Open Doors estimates as many as 400,000 people persist in worshiping Jesus in North Korea. Now, according to Open Doors research, over 90% of Christians killed for their faith last year were in sub-Saharan Africa. 3,100 believers were killed in Nigeria alone. These are the black Muslims killing the black Christians, of which nobody says a damn thing about in this country. Nobody. Nigeria has the biggest church auditoriums in the world, but that is in the south. In the north and increasingly the central regions, Christians are in a minority. Radical Islamic groups like Boko Haram and Fulani militants can create havoc. Almost half, about 46% of Nigeria is believed to be Christian. The Sahel region, where several governments have fallen to sudden military coups under pressure from Islamist terrorists, has also seen an increase in Christian persecution. So this is an ideology. Our friend Zuhdi Jasser, who is Muslim, says the Muslim faith has not gone through a reformation. And so he calls it political Islam. And so Biden and his ilk want Israel to agree to the creation of a country out of its 4,000-year-old homeland of a faith and people who haven't gone through a reformation and who commit time and time and time again to the obliteration of the Jewish people. Again, this is my red line. I'm not going to sit back and, okay, that's okay. Eritrea is often called the North Korea of Africa. Phone calls and internet usage are heavily monitored, and Christians suffer the most. It's run by a one-party Marxist dictatorship under the People's Front for Democracy and Justice. The country works closely with the Communist Chinese, which has helped it expand its repressive technology and surveillance apparatus used to persecute Christians. China itself appeared as number 15 on the list, slightly lower than other states due to the absence of Islamist violence and the existence of an official Christian church that only offers communist propaganda. Other notable countries on the list include India at number 11, where Hindu nationalism fuels repression, Iraq and Syria, 17 and 18, where Turkish jihadist proxies threaten Christians in Kurdish areas, and Yemen at number 3, where the expansion of the Houthi terrorism has made practicing the faith nearly impossible. That's why I say over and over again, the fight that Israel is fighting is a fight for all of us. All of us. And it's trying to protect the homeland of Jews and Christians, the birthplace of Christ, and of course the birth of Judaism. And so people, well, what does this have to do with us? It has to do with everything. It has to do with everything. It's crucial. Peter Schweitzer, one of the greats, over at Breitbart, why Beijing wants Americans to keep using TikTok. Everyone talking about a potential ban on the social media app TikTok has a strong opinion. TikTok influencers and users, mostly teens and young adults, do not want their access to the popular platform interrupted. TikTok's strongest critics, mostly conservative, are urging the Supreme Court to uphold a federal law that would force ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, to divest and end its U.S. operations. And I agree with that. President-elect Trump, meanwhile, has filed an amicus brief advocating for SCOTUS to delay a potential TikTok ban. He says Trump's brief rightly highlights the unprecedented, novel, difficult tension between free speech rights on one side and foreign policy on the other. Not for me, really. Communist infiltration is not a free speech right. But there's another opinion from a source the court will not hear, from the Chinese Communist Party. What do they think? Very few are talking about what the communists in Beijing think of the looming TikTok decision. China's wielding TikTok as a weapon to wage unrestricted warfare on the United States. Exactly. This is why the Chinese Communist Party views TikTok as a modern-day Trojan horse and classified its power algorithm as a top-secret national security asset. They're laughing over there in Beijing. TikTok's constant stream of short and overstimulating videos makes for a powerfully addictive source of propaganda. In a restricted Chinese academic journal, Colonel Dai Zhuwa, a professor of China's top military academy, he wrote that the real battle between the United States and China is information-driven mental warfare. And they're right. Another CCP journal stated the Younger People Liberation Army propagandists increasingly realize the popularity of short videos online, and TikTok is the best example of this so far. And a leading Chinese Communist Liberation Army strategist argues that the CCP must use information and popular spiritual and cultural products as weapons to influence people's psychology. There's no excuse. The ownership of TikTok either leaves Communist China or the entire operation leaves. And I'm sorry if the prepubescent world's upset. I'm sorry if the politicians are upset. But this is a war on America. I'll be right back.
The voice of reason in a sea of lunacy. Mark Levin. Dial in now. 877-381-3811.
Happy me. Yes, it be. Let's go to Jennifer in Middleburg, Virginia, the great WMAL. WMAL. How are you?
Good, Mark. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good, good. I can't tell you how upset I am about this supposed agreement that Biden is trying to push through. Who didn't see this coming just days before Trump will be taking office? Hamas is calling all the shots.
Now, wait a minute. They're saying that both teams worked very closely together. What do you think about that?
That did bother me a little bit. It really did. It really did, because I was convinced that if this didn't happen until he took over, he would have said, look, this is going to end right now. Release all of the hostages, not 33 with half of them dead or whatever. And 3,000 of their prisoners are being released. And
by the way, why do the people in the media keep saying a couple hundred will be released when it is several thousand that are going to be released, according to the Jerusalem Post? Why are they downplaying that? Isn't that like the biggest problem with the deal?
Yes, absolutely. I just want to tell you my biggest fear, and I'm just going to get it out there. Yes. Hamas is going to think, well, this is a big win for them. If they can do this has emboldened them.
Well, they said it is, and so did CARE, their front group in America. But here's the silver lining here. Once the hostages are out of there, those who remain alive, nothing stops Israel from going back in if Israel feels it needs to go back in, just as it's going back into Lebanon to deal with Hezbollah. Nothing stops Israel from going in. They're still going to have a presence in that area of Gaza where the arms keep coming in. Philadelphia. Again, I'm just looking at some of the silver lining aspects of this. And I think with President Trump, with Vice President Vance, who's quite pro-Israel, when you look at Rubio, you look at Waltz, you look at that entire team, you're going to have Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. That's one of the things that's certainly to the positive. That is, these are Israel supporters. There's never been a bigger supporter of Israel than President Trump. So this is, to me, a close call. This is, to me, nothing to be jumping up and down about. I'm a bit of a cynic on this. On the other hand, I'm not going to take it upon myself to try and blow it out of the water or anything like that. If Netanyahu and Trump think this is the right thing, and we shall see how this plays out, it's certainly not the end of the world. So I don't want you to get so down about it, but I do understand your mentality because it concerned me all day. I was gathering as much information as I could. The media are not reporting it accurately. Why, I don't know. Well, it's the media, that's why. And then I think right now Israel's also going to start focusing with the support of the United States on taking out the Iranian nuclear sites and hopefully bringing down that regime. Boy, it must be cold in Middleburg, Virginia right now. Isn't it freezing out there?
Way too cold. Way too cold, yeah.
Are you a horse person?
I am, yes.
Because everybody in the country should know Middleburg, Virginia is known for its horses. It's horse country. So what you keep the horses in the barn? Do you have like a heating system in there for them? What do you do?
No, they go in and out. It depends on what they like. They have blankets on and everything. They adapt. Horses are adaptable.
They're a lot of work, though, aren't they?
They are a lot, yes. There's a lot of people here that could help, though.
They're a lot of work. They eat a lot. They crap a lot. And, if you can't get them out in the wintertime, you got to keep shoveling that stuff. Am I about right on that?
Oh, yes, Mark. Well, come on. We all have our little things, but that's something.
Those are big things.
Heaven for me, so I can't complain.
Listen, I know, and it's beautiful out there. Absolutely beautiful. All right, Jennifer, take care of yourself. Thank you. Let's go to Bill, Tulsa, Oklahoma, XM Satellite. Bill, how are you, sir?
It is an honor and a privilege to speak to you, sir. I'm a first-time caller, a long-time listener. Two things. First and foremost, on behalf of myself and my fellow Oklahomans, we thank you, we love you, because we love what you do. Second thing, how desperate is Joe Biden on having a legacy of actually having accomplished something that he's taking credit for what Trump did with Israel? Short and to the point.
And you're right. I mean, this is a guy that funded Iran, for God's sakes.
I know. The Israeli left behind.
Yeah, and the Israeli government want nothing to do with him. They're thrilled that he's gone. Thrilled.
Yeah.
All right, Bill.
And when you were ill.
Go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry.
I prayed for you when you were ill.
Oh, thank you, man. Some people still think I'm ill. You know that, Bill? What's wrong with those people?
I don't know. But it would be an honor and privilege if I could call you brother.
You can call me brother. Love it. Thank you, Bill. You're a good man. Thank you. Let's keep going. Yaakov, Long Beach, New York, the great WABC. Go right ahead, please.
Hey, Mark. How you doing? Long-time listener.
Thank you.
I appreciate you for all your commentary, and especially your Israel commentary. But I have to say, as an ardent Trump supporter, I simply could not be more disappointed in this horrible deal. You're hedging your bets on it. I'm clear that it's a complete capitulation. It's leaving Hamas.
I'm really not hedging my bets. I don't like it. Under the circumstances, though, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. So I could easily come on here and just beat the table one way or the other. And I spent an hour going through it. The release of 3,000 terrorists, there's no excuse for that. There's nothing that can justify that. But I also know that I went through what's available publicly on this, that Israel has the power to go in and pulverize them again, as it does with Hezbollah in Lebanon. There is an upside to that, because right now their hands have been somewhat tied, even by themselves in this regard. But it's not to me, it's not something to celebrate. Get the hostages out, yes, but overall, there are big problems with it.
Yeah, and let me just really cut to the point with this. I think, I don't know if you ever heard of the commentator in Israel, Moshe Feiglin, but I enjoy him because he cuts right to the point. And he said something very clear and obvious, which is that Gaza is dependent on Israeli electricity and Israeli water and gas and energy supplies. And there should be no negotiations. Talking about art of the deal, we're going to shut off your electricity. We're going to shut off your water.
Okay, hold on a second. I think you're confused about one thing, Yaakov. The United States doesn't control that. Israel controls that. If Israel wants to cut off their electricity, Israel can cut off their electricity. I've actually seen the one power plant that is the power plant for the Gaza electricity. So when you say where, it's not like Trump's going to cut off the electrical plant.
No, I'm saying 100%. But in other words, with Trump's support, in other words, that kind of Israeli move. The reason why Israel hasn't done it heretofore is because they've been worried about the Biden administration.
Let's slow down a second. Israel has done it from time to time, as a matter of fact. I don't know about during the Biden administration, but even during Netanyahu's prime ministership, he has cut it off from time to time when they used to make terrorist runs out of Gaza and attack here and there. They would cut it off for a period of time. But go ahead, make your other point.
Yeah, well, and okay, well, that's frankly my main point, and I would also just say that I think it's a mischaracterization to say that Netanyahu and Trump are on the same page in this regard.
I didn't say they're on the same page. In fact, I said that Netanyahu's been under pressure from the Trump team and the Biden team. But if Netanyahu's going to call Trump today and put out a statement, it's on the internet for the whole world to see since it's from the prime minister's office, thanking Donald Trump for his help in getting this deal. What do you want me to say?
Well, you could say the truth, which is putting a lipstick on a pig. He's doing the best he can.
All right, thanks for your call. See, see, now I'm a wimp. The only guy that's speaking out, raising questions about this, I'm a wimp because I can't meet Yaakov's standard. What do you want from me? I've criticized the fact that there's 3,000 terrorists that are being released. I explained to you what Netanyahu has done, that he came under enormous pressure from both sides. I've talked about this guy Witkoff in terms that nobody else has the guts to talk about. Look, that's my opinion. You don't like it, so be it. Kathy, Long Island, New York, the great WABC. Go ahead.
Hi, Mark. I was calling because I think it's interesting that Steve Witkoff, he's been friends with Donald Trump for a long time, and he is the special envoy.
Yeah, I never heard of the guy before a few weeks ago, and then you do a little bit of digging, and I don't know what the great excitement is about this guy.
He was at the Mar-a-Lago press conference. He called Steve Witkoff up to the microphone.
Oh, I know
for a little
that,
bit.
but I didn't know who he was. But yes, you're right, he did.
But it's interesting that Witkoff bought the Helmsley Palace, that hotel, and he ended up selling it to Qatar.
Qatar, correct.
And, he sold it to the Qatar investment.
That was in the New York Times, I believe.
Yeah, Tiffany Trump's husband, Michael Boulos, is Lebanese. His father is a Lebanese American businessman who is Trump's advisor for Arab and Middle Eastern negotiations.
Are you telling me things I know? So what is your point, though?
Yeah, so I'm asking, it almost seems like a conflict of interest in a way for Trump's own support of Israel and then his family. I don't know. It's like
so. Who else is around Trump? Rubio, is he pro-Israel?
Yes.
Hegseth, is he pro-Israel?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that they're
Waltz, is he pro-Israel?
Pro-Israel than anything else.
Yeah, and exactly. They're pro-Israel.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think that the guy who doesn't seem pro-Israel or who seems kind of neutral is Boulos, Assad Boulos.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your call. Fair enough. Fair enough. We have Jennifer from Middleburg distraught by the deal. Yaakov, Long Beach, very disappointed in the deal. Kathy, Long Island, questions the deal. This deal is not popular with everybody. It's just not. And I get it. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I think my brothers and sisters better be paying attention to a push that's going to take place for a Palestinian state. And that's a fight we patriotic Americans need to be prepared to reject 100%. But I smell it. Because the Saudis are demanding it, Qatar's demanding it. They're these Saudis behind 9/11, Qatar behind terrorism right now. I don't even know why we're dealing with them. That's just my opinion. I don't know that I have enough time to do this again. But here it is. Here's how I see this. Trust but verify. I trust Trump. I trust Netanyahu. Doesn't mean I agree with everything. I don't trust Hamas, Qatar, the terrorists. I don't trust Biden and Blinken. So I start from there. The idea that you released 3,000 terrorists, that is extraordinarily troubling. Extraordinarily troubling. This isn't a peace treaty. They say it's a ceasefire. It's not a permanent ceasefire. Now, Israel can go back in if they need to. They're still going to have troops at the Philadelphia quarter and some other key locations in Gaza. Trump has said, through Michael Waltz, who was on Fox, that Hamas will not control Gaza. Hamas will not be the government in charge of Gaza. That Hamas needs to be destroyed. That's what he said. And I agree with that 100%. Hamas is claiming victory. Biden's claiming victory. CARE, the Hamas front group, they're claiming victory. Of course, they could be doing that because that's how they position themselves. Or maybe they actually feel that they're on the precipice of being destroyed. That too. We'll see how this plays out. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine, the men and women in Israel, and you, the American people. I salute you, and I'll see you tomorrow. God bless.